Hello viewers, welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, I will take you through an area that is commonly tested under oral skills. In the previous videos, I've taken you through how oral poems and oral songs are tested in Kcse. I looked at Kcse 2016 up to 2021. Now, there is an area that can also be tested on under oral skills, and that is a narrative. So when a narrative is examined, what are some of the questions to expect? There is an example of a narrative here that I would want us to go through. So the narrative goes, one afternoon, a big wolf waited in a dark forest for a little girl to come along, carrying a basket of food to her grandmother. Finally, the little girl did come along, and she was carrying the basket of food. "Are you carrying the basket of food to your grandmother?" asked the wolf. The little girl answered, "Yes, I am." So the wolf asked the girl where her grandmother lived. When the girl told him, he disappeared to the woods. When the little girl opened the door of her grandmother's house, she noticed there was somebody in bed with a night cape and a gown. She realized that it was the wolf. So the little girl took a gun from her basket and shot the wolf dead. So that is the narrative there. Question 1. If you were narrating this story, how would you ensure your audience remains glued to the story? So such a question expects the candidate to explore ways on how to sustain the attention of the audience as the narration goes on. So some of the responses that a candidate can think of is by ensuring that the narrator wears an appropriate facial expression. So an example would be, I would wear a malicious look when narrating where the wolf asks the girl where grandma lives. So you must be very careful. Most candidates write, I will employ an appropriate facial expression. So you know that is not specific. Your answer must be specific in that which type of facial expression are you going to wear, and in narrating which part of the narrative there. So it must be specific. Another probable response would be, I would be audible. When narrating the story. And that will ensure that the audience is glued to the contents of the story. I would also employ tonal variation, especially at the last part, which reads, "So the little girl took a gun from her basket and shot the wolf dead," I would lower the pitch of my voice. So that is also something that a response that a candidate can give. So it is not merely stating that you will vary the tone, but be specific to the point that you can vary the tone. Another one, I would mimic the sentiments of the wolf as well as the girl. For example, I could, let's say, "Are you carrying the basket to your grandmother?" So I will be mimicking the voice of the wolf as well as the girl. "Yes, I am." I would place my hands on the head to illustrate how the girl was carrying the basket on her head. So it does not merely score when a candidate mentions that I will dramatize what is going on in the story. Bring about that dramatization where it comes about. Question 2. How would you say the words of the girl and the wolf in your narration? How would you say the words of the girl and the wolf? Starting with the words of the wolf asks this question: "Are you carrying the basket to your grandmother?" So for the wolf, I would use a rising intonation because this is a question that requires an answer. Are you carrying the basket to your grandmother? So I will use a rising intonation in asking that question because a response is required from the girl. So number 2, I would employ an inquisitive look. So as I ask the question in a rising intonation, I would also employ an inquisitive look. The words of the girl, "Yes, I am," I would use a falling intonation. Then at the same time, I would stress the words "yes, I," to show the girl's decisiveness. Then I would also use a confident tone. Would also use a confident tone. So those are some of the responses that you can think about. Question 3, how would you prepare yourself effectively to tell this story? And this comes before the actual day of narration. What you need to do in order to have an effective presentation or narration during that day. So here is where you can think about. I would get prior information about the audience. Number 2, I would also get to know, likes and dislikes of the audience. I would get to know the likes and dislikes of the audience. I would also prepare the props that are necessary for telling the story. So there are some of the costumes or props that can be helpful to illustrate, for illustrations during the story. I would also prepare them. I would also prepare the garments. That reflect the story. So in this case, maybe I could be donned in a leopard skin to bring about that aspect of the wild. Because in the story, there is the mention of a dark forest. So I would don, let's say, leopard skin, or let's say banana leaves, to reflect the content of the story that I'm going to give. I would also get to venue in time. Then I would be clear on the level or type of language that I'm going to use depending on the audience. Remember, such responses could also apply to other stage performances like a talk, a speech, and narratives. So in such cases, some of these points could be used as preparations for effective stage performance. So you can just manipulate these answers even next time that you've been asked that you are preparing for a talk. What would you need to do? Then again, the question 1, where you were asked how you would ensure that your audience remains glued to the story, this would also be relevant to a talk. It can also be relevant to when you are giving a speech. Before I end this lesson, I would like to thank you so much, viewers, for your subscriptions and the support that you've given to us. Again, to those who are new here, if you find the content here relevant, kindly hit onto that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so that anytime we produce a video like this, YouTube will automatically notify you. There is another question that could be asked when a narrative is tested, and that is, how would you draw the attention of your audience? You will have responses like this. I will clap my hands, clearing the throat, maybe give a relevant anecdote, sing a relevant song, greet the audience to create rapport. So you can think along those lines if the question expects you to bring to the fore how to capture the attention of the audience. Again, you can also be asked about the indicators of inattentiveness. How do you know that your audience is not following the story and is inattentive for that matter? That is where you are going to think about if the audience is slouching on their chairs, leaning backwards, pen drumming, cracking the knuckles, sleeping on the chairs, dozing, unnecessary movement, murmuring, whispering, holding mini discussions, making noise. You can think along those lines. Another question that you could be asked, you could also be required to bring about the indicators of attentiveness. How will you know that your audience is with you and following your story? So you will look if there is a meaningful eye contact from your audience. You will also check if your audience reacts to the emotions of the story. You will also check their facial expressions to see if their facial expression reflect the content of the story. You will also check if the audience is seated upright and if the audience joins you whenever needs arises, like in singing, answering questions, and so forth. Viewers, that brings us to the end of our study for today. Allow me to wish our dear Form 4s a very prosperous examination period. I know that you are going to shine just as the stars you are. I wish you success in the forthcoming Kcse examinations.